very recently.
Oh.
Before one of my own games. So.
Okay, well, and of course you talk to Magnus a lot. He is one of your friends in Oslo, so you might have actually shared your ideas with Magnus.
Nice weather. Really nice weather today.
Wow.
Let's move on there. David could get in trouble here.
Okay, but very interesting, and you can definitely tell us then, why is this a good move?
Well, this last move, I mean, it's in conjunction with a bigger plan, but it is simply to get this symmetrical pawn structure where white has this superior light square bishop. So with this last move, I mentioned the queen's just sliding across. Black's pawn is actually pinned now, so the black pawn in front of the black bishop cannot go and capture a white pawn because the bishop behind it will drop. And white simply wants to take back that pawn with the queen. Next move, attacking the black bishop, gaining a bit of time. White's rook wants to slide across as well to challenge the black queen on the open d file. It's a multi-purpose move, and I'm slightly surprised Nepomniachtchi is actually thinking right now, because Black's plans are automatic. You have to bring the black pieces out, especially those black pieces asleep over there on the queen side. So once Black starts developing, we will see a clash of armies. And as far as I remember, this position will start to transpose in a few moves' time back to games that have been played, at least, back to more familiar territory. And I remember studying a game by Artemiev in this line, assuming that the players kind of transpose back to known waters. So Nepomniachtchi, meanwhile, making a couple of faces there, not entirely happy. I think he's definitely on his own right now.
Wow, is that basically the first time in the match?
Yeah, I mean, the first time this early, at least. Normally, he's not on his own until move 18, 20, or afterwards. So in terms of the clock time as well, nothing drastic for Nepomniachtchi, but if he's uncomfortable with the position, he will burn a lot of time, and that can be only good for Magnus.
All right, Jan Nepomniachtchi thinking for 2 minutes now. He is probably out of opening preparations, and that means probably we're going to have an exciting game from Dubai. We have some more people down there. Rune is, as you know, on ground, and he's met up with another great chess commentator.
It is, again, unsurprisingly, a beautiful day here at the Dubai 2020 Expo. We are super excited for the Game 6 that has historically been very excited throughout World Championship history. Here with me, we have Grandmaster Pepe Guanca from the Chess 1024 Spanish broadcast. Pepe, you have a sound that you make when we see a very interesting move. Can you throw it at us?
Of course, it's ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And some sort of tribute to an NBA commentator from Spain who was very famous, and we all love him, actually. Yeah.
And what kind of move to serve this awesome sound?
Yeah, there are many moves, like some amazing checkmates or combination, whatever works, yeah.
So, do you think that in Game 6 today we will see a move worthy of the ra-ta-ta-ta?
We are all hoping for that. I mean, the first 5 games were very tense. Nepo has shown the extremely accurate preparation, and he even managed to put some pressure on Carlsen's position. But I think I also smell like today we are going to have a lot of fun.
So do you have any predictions for today?
So Magnus is driving the white pieces. I will say Magnus wins today, yeah.
Okay, so here we have it from the Spanish broadcast. Magnus will win today. Will we have an exciting game? We have our fingers crossed. Thank you very much to Pepe. You have to go and commentate on the Spanish broadcast, and you have to commentate on the game, guys. Back to you.
Ooh, will we see the ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta from Pepe Cuenca, the Spanish Chess 24 broadcast? We do have a couple of moves in this game.
Yeah, and actually, Magnus's last move is pretty dramatic. So Black brought the queen out, very sensible. Black's queen actually defending the dark square bishop, and now Magnus has offered a pawn sacrifice. Remember, games 1 and 2 of this match, Magnus sacrificed a pawn very, very early, and he's done the same again. So now there's a huge question for Nepomniachtchi. Does he grab a pawn, or does he just develop pieces? We have to look in more detail here. White's knight has just come out. White actually doesn't want to use the queen. I mentioned that this is one of the main ideas, to capture the pawn. Instead, he wants to capture with the knight, where the knight would land on a great square. And the reason this is a pawn sacrifice is because there's no longer a pin on this file. After black plays pawn takes pawn, White's queen can no longer take this bishop because it is defended. That means that Magnus will recapture this pawn with a knight, gaining time against the black bishop, and depending on where the black bishop retreats, there will be consequences. For example, if the black bishop goes back this way, maybe the most natural square, then White will push a pawn forward. And now he'll continue harassing this bishop, but he's also opened up a serious threat of developing this bishop. Now we know why it's still at home. He wants to develop it 2 squares, where it will attack the black queen and skewer it to the black rook behind. So some serious threats now from Carlsen. And that does make me wonder whether Nepomniachtchi, when he gets back to the board, will indeed capture this pawn. Because if he does, white gains a lot of time. He'll gain time against the bishop and probably gain time later with developing too. White's going to get a lot of activity in compensation for just 1 pawn. And if Nepomniachtchi doesn't want to allow this activity, instead of taking here, maybe he'll just develop his knight and argue that, okay, maybe white has a small advantage, white has the better pieces, but at some point black will try and push in the center and might be able to equalize later in the game.
I hope I
Yeah,
got that.
I was just going to ask, is there any possibility that black can just focus on developing the light squared bishop? Because if you do that, you tend to neutralize any form of white initiative.
Yeah, you called this the problem child in the past, right, Ivanka? Normally it's stuck at home for a long time in this type of opening, so it makes sense to move it now, maybe to develop it here, to challenge white's superiority on this diagonal. And now there would be a huge question for Magnus. Does he just simply recapture this pawn, or does he try and create some more threats, bring the knight in maybe? Not 100% sure about this, to be honest, but it would at least open up some threats against this pawn. Maybe this wouldn't quite work because of black's bishop jumping forward with a double attack, but some real calculation needs to be done now. And yeah, this is already getting complicated. So these are the moves I'm expecting from Nepomniachtchi. Maybe bring the knight forward, possibly Ivanka's plan as well, although some calculation required there. I would be surprised if he grabs the pawn, and I think it's not worth suffering for, to be honest. You give your opponent too many moves. You give them too much time.
Yeah, I agree. I would not touch that pawn at all. I mean, like you say, you gain too much time attacking pieces, and also white's pieces have got so much harmony, whereas black's pieces still at home and no prospect of ever getting out. That is like, I've played this type of positions with the black pieces myself, and it's my nightmare, basically. I don't want this at all.
And also, I think just an instructive move here, just if we end up in this position with black having an extra pawn, black's knight wants to come out next turn, so I think Magnus will stop this. He'll bring his knight forward, and we talked about these bishops. Look at the power of this piece now. It's tying down the whole black army. Black's knight can't jump out without losing material. Black's bishop can never move without losing a pawn. And if these two pieces are stuck at home, then this rook in the corner is not happy either. So I think Magnus would have more than ample compensation here.
Yeah, I think if you compare the players as well to yesterday, I think it was clear that Magnus was very uncomfortable out of the opening, and Jan looked very confident. Again, body language, maybe you can't tell too much, but I'm sure in this position at the moment that Magnus has got what he wants, at least. He's got a position. Jan has to think. Jan's out of his great preparation, which he's been playing all the time, and he's got him thinking. That's all you can do in a World Championship match. Get a position, a playable position, which you know quite well, get your opponent thinking. So it's, yeah, he must be happy, I'd have thought here.
And is it an opening that can invite for a long fighting game, and a long game maybe?
Yeah, I think it could end up in anything, right, Simon?
Yeah.
Possibly you could envisage some attack from white against the black king. Possibly the queens might come off at some stage and it will just be a long grind. So Magnus keeping his options open, and that's one thing I think he will need to do if he wants to win some games in this match.
And yeah, I also noticed that there's some danger, some big danger for black, actually. You know, if you try too much to develop the light squared bishop, I'm sorry, I'm obsessed with that piece, but there's even some ideas of actually threatening checkmate. And
maybe we can show these.
yeah, definitely. Because say, for instance, you were to just push the b pawn one square, and you kind of want to go, bishop goes to b7. And this doesn't really work because the knight actually goes to g5. And now the big threat is obviously bishop takes rook. And also, after the bishop comes and challenges the light squared, this is the main point, that the dark square bishop develops to b2. And this is such a common trick, actually, in this particular opening. Threatens the knight, and queen takes pawn checkmate.
Yeah.
Deadly.
This is completely deadly, actually. I think this is win from the spot, right?
Love the sound effect there. Can you just do that? Can you just do that? Sorry, can you do that one more time?
I didn't realise I wasn't on camera. I just like.
No. Just one more time, please.
Let's hear it, Ivanka.
Go on, Ivanka, just for me.
I was like.
Come on, love it.
I'm apologise for Simon.
What is that? Deadly mate? Is that what we call that? No,
Kiss of death, I call it.
Kiss of death.
Kiss of death.
Yeah.
It's quite like that.
It's very dangerous when Wernicke makes that sound. The player should be scared.
And we can just show why that sound was made in this position. So if this happens, then for example, if black takes the bishop,
close.
I mean, every other move loses as well, I think. Then white takes this knight, removes the key defender of the black king, and attacking the black queen. And when there's a recapture, what's that sound, Wernicke?
Yeah, got it. One more time.
Last time, okay? Now and then.
All right. Well, if this happens, then we'll hear the sound again. Is there any chance Jan Nepomniachtchi can let this happen?
If he's careless, I mean, already if he pushes this pawn forward, he pretty much loses on the spot. So already that's how high the stakes are for Nepomniachtchi. This would be an ambitious move. Probably it's not his first instinct because it does open up this bishop, this white bishop's diagonal. But already we're at that stage in the game where one slip might give white a big advantage. So I'm not expecting this move. I don't think he'll blunder yet, but that idea is in the air. For example, even if black brings the knight out, even in a position like this, if black continues developing, there are already threats, for example, of this knight suddenly springing forward, unleashing the two bishops. And not just that, but also the queen positioned nicely to threaten some checkmates.
Yeah.
Yeah, dangerous times.
And it brings me on to a question that we have from Stephen Cotterill on Twitter, who asks us, does the open structure of Game 6 make it more likely that it will end in a win rather than a draw?
It's hard to say, actually, because, for example, even in Game 5, just before the rest day, when Nepomniachtchi had a big advantage, the pawn structure was symmetrical there. There were enough open lines that he had an advantage, but enough open lines that Magnus could neutralize him by offering some trades later. So the same could happen here. White might get a small advantage. It might just be completely balanced. But if we see maybe all the rooks coming to the center, trading themselves off, then it will just be equal. So any direction is possible right now.
Yeah, I think it's clear in open positions where you have these open lines. So David very nicely pointed out the crisscross bishops, which I like a lot. But once you get that, I mean, there's more danger on black making mistakes. So Jan very wisely is taking some time now, because if he continues playing quickly here, we've seen the danger already. He can find himself in many problems. But if he gets your idea, Wernicke, and I think of swapping those light square bishops off and just trying to make some exchanges, it could get neutralized quite quickly. I thought it was interesting at the start. I don't know if both of you have played many tournaments as well. I've had this about the etiquette of turning up to the game. The only fight I saw in a chess tournament was one guy would turn up always about 40 minutes late. Every single game, he'd turn up 40 minutes late. Didn't matter who he was playing, and it was a tournament, and he was playing against a hot-headed Italian 2200 player, and this Italian it was like he was there, he was getting really annoyed. It was in Budapest. The guy turned up, and he's like, "Why are you always late? You disrespect me." It's like from The Godfather or something. It was like, "You always turn up late. I need my respect." And then he lunged for him. He literally lunged for him over the board, and he never turned up late again after that. So yeah, but I don't know. Do you find
That's what it took.
Do you find it is a bit of a mind game? I think sometimes if you're there and your opponent does turn up late. I mean, I think at this level it doesn't happen a lot, obviously, but in other tournaments, it's maybe a little bit of lack of respect, possibly. Yeah. So,
first of all, Simon, I love your accents. Firstly, the Russian one earlier, now Italian. Your point today.
I don't know. Not good. Sorry to all Russians and Italians out there. Please do not come and get me.
I actually thought they sounded quite the same.
The same. I've only got one accent, and that's all I can do. It's like all my languages just go to that weird accent. So,
but yeah, I think the etiquette, I mean, there's different interpretations. For example, I often arrive maybe 2 or 3 minutes late, and I normally just say sorry to my opponent when I've arrived first, just to make sure they don't think it's a mark of disrespect. It's just because I like to avoid maybe getting distracted talking to people before the game starts. I like to avoid the cameras, when they're snapping away. Photographers often just allowed there for the first 5 minutes or so. So I don't think it's anything personal when the players arrive late, but sometimes mind games are involved, and we saw Nepomniachtchi arriving later than normal. So
Yeah, having said that, there's a famous story about Jan Nepomniachtchi, how he almost lost in an Olympiad because the Olympiads used to have the what was it called again?
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance policy, where you had to be present at the board when the game started. And he wasn't. And so the Russian team was scrambling away, but they managed to get him there on time.
A few seconds to spare.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think they use that here, but the zero tolerance is if you turn up 30 seconds late, you lose the game.
Yeah, that's
so
it.
You have to be there at the start.
Yeah, it was a very controversial rule.
Yeah. I mean, things can happen, can't they? You could get stuck in the lift or something. It'd be a bit unfortunate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think FIDE has installed 15 minutes. That's kind of the cut-off point. So if you're 15 minutes late or more, then you might lose the game. But normally, the player will be there.
Yeah.
I once had a test nightmare, which was really quite traumatic. It was so traumatic that I woke up and I actually consulted an arbiter about it. So I was playing...
Wow, a literal nightmare.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was
Okay.
terrible. I mean, I just woke up, I dreamt that I was at an Olympiad. I had the black pieces. Now, this was very important. I shook hands with my opponent. Then I went to the toilet. And then I came back to the board. And I had every single device possible. I had like 3 mobile phones, an iPad, and the game has started. And something starts ringing, and I'm like, no, switch it off. And the arbiter goes, that's it, you've lost. And I said, but I haven't even made a move. And he said, no, you shook hands. You lost, and I remember arguing with them, and they said they marched me out of the playing hall with all my devices and everything.
no.
And I was told by the arbiter, who I called after this nightmare, that no, I wouldn't have lost. But then I actually consulted some more arbiters quite recently, and they said, no, unfortunately, you would have lost the game.
Oof, it's harsh. Well, Jan Nepomniachtchi, 12 minutes thinking now, and we're gonna head down to Dubai. Maybe the person that knows what is going through his head is, of course, his second and trainer, Vladimir Potkin.
Absolutely, Kaya. What an exciting start it's been to Game 6. Few would have predicted this opening. Well, it's pretty clear what Magnus was up to on the rest day. Besides the football, it was all about his approach for today. But how is Jan Nepomniachtchi going to handle it, as you said, is the big question. And who better to answer it than his longtime trainer, second and guide, Grandmaster Vladimir Potkin. We've got him with us. Thank you for joining us, Vladimir.
Oh, Tanya, yes, thank you for inviting.
All right, Vladimir, before we get to the chess that we're seeing, I want to ask you, what was the rest day like for Team Nepomniachtchi?
Well, of course, every rest day is always good to have, and we just enjoy the city, especially now there is a holidays, some fireworks in the evening with a good view, and in the midday it was some sun, beach, and just good nature to have to refuel the energy because the long match is going.
That does sound very relaxing and very refreshing, but what we do have on the board in Game 6, now few of us expected it. How much of a surprise was it for your team?
Well, every game is exceptional, and every game is something special because teams are preparing, and I looking much forward for this complicated and games that will be, I think, very long for today. So I think Jan is ready for everything, and he's fighting in every game.
He's definitely shown that he's ready for the fight, but this is the first game that we see Jan not blitzing out his opening moves. He's pausing, he's having a think. What is his approach when he sees something that he's not completely expecting or prepared for? What do you think is going on in his mind right now?
Well, Jan is always very flexible, so of course, all we know he's great speed, so when it's needed, he can speed it up, and so why not to think when it's time?
All right, and we saw this in Game 2, a very complex game out of the Catalan as well. This time an interesting opening surprise. Are you also, now while the other games were a little slow battle, are you expecting a tensed one in this one?
Well, of course, match is going. It's not the beginning of the match, but sorry, the middle. So the tension is going high, and every player is making all the best. And of course, the games are very complicated. So just everything can happen every day.
All right, and finally, Taras, Vladimir, of course, you're a strong grandmaster yourself. You worked with Jan. But when you're in this situation as a second, as a trainer here, you know that Jan has to make the moves himself and sort of play out the position himself. Is that a bit, how is that feeling when you feel like there's a certain direction he needs to take, but you don't have control over what's happening right now?
Well, first of all, I always believe in Jan, so I believe that he is great player and he will choose the good direction. So for me, like this computer evaluation doesn't mean anything. For me, more important Jan's live feelings and what he's just thinking of and how he's behaving. So just all in the hands of Jan, and I believe in him.
Thank you so much for those insights. Thanks, Vladimir, for joining us. There we have it. Big fight on our hands. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Fantastic to get insight from the person down in Dubai who knows Jan Nepomniachtchi the best. And we did also have his move here. Are you surprised by it?
I'm not at all surprised by Jan's move. Very sensible, and it was interesting to see Potkin think that there's nothing to worry about here for Black. We'd meanwhile see Magnus on the camera there, head in hands. That's purely a recall face. I don't think he's trying to work things out. He's obviously studied this position before. I was actually saying to Simon as well that I had this exact position on my computer screen just a few weeks ago during the Grand Swiss, preparing for one of my games. So I think for sure Magnus has seen this position, and when I was preparing for this from the white side, I was thinking, okay, there's two main moves here. White is going to capture that black pawn on the c4 square, but you can take it with the knight, or you can take it with the white queen. And both moves I felt were pretty promising. I'm in the same boat as Magnus. I'm trying to recall which one I thought was the better move. And normally when you have two good options, it can be hard to choose between them. So that's what Magnus is doing right now. He's going to capture that black c4 pawn, but will it be with the white knight, or will it be with the white queen? Matter of taste.
So would you say with the queen is more aggressive? I think you pointed out, or Ivanka pointed out the plan and yourself that if you take with the queen can head over towards the king side. So this square on h4, maybe even going for a king side attack. So could that be the more aggressive move to play here? Knight takes feels very natural as well, though. So it'd be very interesting to see what he captures with. So.
Yeah, I think knight takes is the more positional way. You just want to kind of control some central squares, and also you open up this bishop. So, for example, if black does push forward in the center, black will have to be concerned about some pins later on, maybe. So this is the more positional approach. You can develop this white bishop now in two different ways, this way or this way. And, okay, either way. It's an interesting position, but as you mentioned, queen takes pawn is definitely the more ambitious, more aggressive, but also maybe the less intuitive of the two options, because this queen, you're normally taught when you're young, don't bring your queen out too early, and it might get kicked around. But yeah, as you mentioned, for example, if black just continues developing, at some point here, then white's queen might well swing across, and similar ideas to the one we pointed out earlier. White's knight might spring forward, threatening some juicy checkmate plans against the black king. And if you have two or three pieces attacking, it can be quite scary. This bishop will eliminate the black defender at some point, and then the white queen and knight will team up to go for some attack. And yeah, this is definitely one of the main plans behind taking with the queen, but maybe Magnus is just trying to work out the details. For example, what will happen if black pushes in the center. I think this is the key move, no matter which way Magnus recaptures right now. Black wants to push in the middle just to gain some space and to unleash his own bishop, which is normally not a great piece. So Magnus is just, he knows this move will arrive next or over the next couple of turns, and he just wants to prepare for it. So that's what I'm expecting. Either knight takes pawn or queen takes pawn, but I can't tell which.
Well, we did hear from Vladimir Potkin. Another Vladimir Kramnik has made a fantastic strategy lesson on Chessable, and that is today's free Chessable course that you can check out on Chessable and work on as this game is unfolding. See the link in the bottom. A strategy lesson by former world champion Vladimir Kramnik. That sounds interesting. Will this be a strategic battle, this game?
I think it always is at this top level when the players have such deep understanding. But of course, Vladimir Kramnik, one of the best strategic players of all time, and probably my favorite player.
What are the number ones when it comes to chess strategy? What should you always sort of think about?
That's a question, Kai. I guess it's vast, but normally it's just going back to basics. Sometimes it's remembering the pawn structure, it's remembering where your pieces go, which pieces belong on which squares. It's combining that, though. Strategy, you always need to supplement it with tactics. Yeah, so that's why we always recommend working on tactics. For example, on Chess24, the Chessable, you can go through these tactical puzzles, tactics trainers, but you need to remember the basics. You can't rely just on these tricks all the time. You need to kind of use tactics in order to get you the strategical advantages in the position. And here, for example, the strategic ideas might rely on those bishops that we mentioned. White will try and prove that later his bishops are superior to black's bishops, and a small advantage like that one, especially if it's long term, might eventually decide the game.
Is that dark squared black bishop. Does that feel dangerous at all to Magnus? Because it is, you know, far up the board and it's looking at, you know, the king.
Black's dark square bishop, it's unclear yet whether
Please,
it's
please,
his best
just
piece
let me get
or
this,
whether it's
please.
actually a target. So Black's dark square bishop could potentially be threatened. Black might have to lose a bit of time retreating it later because it's too advanced. So we saw in a couple of lines where
Please.
if White uses the queen to take this black pawn, that maybe the black bishop will feel vulnerable and will step back. So that's the thing. Black's bishop, it's peering at the White king, but right now everything near the White king, all the pawns, everything is defended. So that's nothing, I think, for Magnus to worry about there.
All right. So it is these two options. You know, it's going to capture. Which piece will he use? Is that basically what he's thinking about now?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he could consider just developing the White dark square bishop, but that would entail kind of a continued pawn sacrifice, and I don't think it's as effective as it was on the last turn. So yeah, I think he's just kind of going down these two variations, knight takes pawn or queen takes pawn. He's looking 4 or 5 moves into the future, and then he's going to compare and evaluate the final positions in his mind, and then he'll make the decision. So,
which one would you go for, Simon?
I'd probably, I mean, I love getting my queen near my opponent's king, so I'd probably take with the queen and swing it over to the square that David pointed out near Black's king side. But it's quite risky, that plan as well, because you know your queen could get in trouble in this position as well. If your queen does swing over there, it could lack squares. So the safer option, I'm sure, is taken with a knight. But queen takes will show a bit more ambition if White plays that. So I'm kind of hoping he does take with a queen. Yeah. I feel, because that means he's up for it basically. So yeah.
I feel that he will capture with the queen because, you know, he'll be thinking about similar openings, and it is not an unknown idea to capture the pawn with the queen and then swing the queen over. And it is an open position, and I've always gone by the philosophy that when the position is super open, that you've got to mobilize every single piece you have, and you shouldn't be making any luxury type moves. So for me, queen takes pawn fits in.
Mm-hmm. How about any stats on this position? Has it arisen before? Simon on G-Chess.
You know what? There's hardly any games, if not any. Zero games.
Really?
It's very unique on move 10 to have a position in chess nowadays which has not been seen. You know, most positions in move 10 have been seen somewhere, but as far as we can work out, this is totally unique. Obviously, David studied it and looked at it, but you know, he's a genius, so you've got to expect that. But it's, you know, no, very impressive. I mean, this kind of fits into your opening repertoire, doesn't it? Because you play these very sort of seemingly not scary openings, but they keep the pieces on the board and they have a lot of sting to them. So I think if you're going to ask before the game, Magnus, would you like this position or not? It'd be a big yes. I mean, probably not an advantage, but it's just a position you can play. Keep the pieces on the board.
And also, I have to say, I don't think that Nepomniachtchi will be entirely familiar with this type of position. You know, he would have, of course, as part of his preparation, just like brushed up on all the main lines and had a response to this. But I mean, here, in this type of position, he's kind of used to having the dark square bishop somewhere else. And I'm just thinking it would be parked next to the black king. So still some...
Yeah, I mean queen takes, just looking at queen takes, think, again, David mentioned this move e5. If black doesn't play e5, and e5 seems like a very sensible move, which I'm sure Jan will play, but you're also a bit scared about pushing pawns, because every pawn move you play in chess weakens a square. You know, every single pawn move weakens a square that it was defending. So e5 I'm sure he'll play, but if he doesn't play that, if you take with the queen, there's stuff like bishop b2 taken on f6, and already if White gets that in, black could be in serious trouble, that kind of idea. So like, let's say bishop d7 here, and we just play bishop b2, a sensible move. You play rook c8, looks very sensible, and now all of a sudden, like, bishop takes f6 could be very nasty for black, because you have to weaken your king by taking with a g pawn here. Otherwise, you lose the bishop on c5. So it's a position where, okay, he's taken with a knight. You know, that's probably more Magnus's style. Just keep it a bit calmer. Maybe a bit more control over that important e5 square. But what do you think about that move, David? Are you happy to see that? Or Would you?
I mean, I would have loved to see the queen move. Again, I was just trying to remember, and I think it was quite promising from what I remember. Black had to be very accurate just to maintain the balance. Still in equal position, but at least it would have posed a lot of direct questions. Magnus's move, of course, nothing wrong with it. It's a matter of taste, as we mentioned, and he does control this square now with both of his knights. But the key question will be how he wants to react if Black does push this pawn at some stage.
This must be the key line now, because if Black doesn't play the move e5, maybe there's b5, but that looks super risky. I mean, I don't think many humans have played this move opening up the diagonal, that bishop you've both mentioned is so strong. So e5 looks so sensible, but there's a very interesting line there by looks at it. If Black does play this, trying to get his light square bishop on the other side of that pawn, you play like, let's say, bishop b2, and Black's now got this issue with the pawn. Can he push it on? And things get very tactical if you play e4, because the bishop takes knight, this move again, which could really, I don't know, this actually was just very bad for Black if you get this in. You really don't want to take the pawn here, do you? Maybe you can, but...
Too ugly, too open.
Too ugly, yeah, so it's like, what does Black play? I mean, he plays e5, he plays bishop b2, and it's not clear what he does next, so it's still some problems for Black to answer here, I think.
Yeah, that's the thing. Black would love to keep pushing this pawn forward, but this move really kills it in its tracks. I wonder whether the pawn actually might get tempted with some pawn sacrifices you mentioned in this line after bishop takes knight, just queen takes, allowing white to gobble up a pawn, but now Black has the two bishops, so this piece can come out now, maybe with tempo, and we'll bring the rooks to the center and argue, okay, at least I have this fearsome bishop pair, but I think Magnus won't have any risk in the position here. He will try and head for an endgame with an extra pawn. And yeah, as you mentioned, this position, I would be shocked personally if Nepomniachtchi finds the courage to push this pawn. Maybe it's the best move, according to the computer, potentially, but it just looks so unhuman and looks too courageous, if anything. Yeah, if he can push this pawn, he would love to, but he needs some calculation there as well. So,
yeah,
key moment maybe for Nepomniachtchi.
I think a key moment, definitely, because if you don't push that pawn, either of the pawns, you could just be worse than Black. You'd be too passive, and that's not what you want against Magnus. So he's got to. I think this is maybe one of the first key moments even of the game.
Yeah, I have to say I just cheated and did look at the computer assessments, and those two pawn moves, in fact, the b5 pawn move was actually top choice. Right. And then second choice was actually the e5. Third choice is actually to develop the light squared bishop, move it to d7, and wait and see, connect the rooks, and then react.
Yeah, I would say this bishop move is very natural, but not ambitious at all, really. It's just kind of on autopilot. You just develop the piece, you worry about what's happening later. So I think if Nepomniachtchi, it's in his style to be dynamic, if he wants to be ambitious and solve all of his opening problems. Most likely this move, but if he will need a lot of time. But if he's really feeling sharp today, I'll push this pawn